Ambassador Foley, why such a timid tax cut? Half a percentage point brings the sales tax down to 5.80. What is it? People hardly will notice that. This is such an onerous tax increase that you and the other two declaring candidates have said, why isn't anybody talking about cutting income tax?
Well, listen, I think the sales tax is the most regressive tax we have, so it's lowering the sales tax first is unleavens the burden, if you will, on working families most immediately. I actually think it is a significant tax decrease. It's about $350 million off the budget, so it's expensive. But I think it's worthwhile, and I think it will help those families and it will help the economy.
Is that $350 million a one-year figure or a two-year figure? And how would you make up for that revenue, or what?
Well, as I said, we're going to hold discretionary spending flat for 2 years, and that will create the opportunity to reduce taxes.
Tom, one of the biggest urban aid programs, in effect, is the school funding formula, particularly in places like Hartford, Bridgeport, and Haven, and to a lesser degree, Waterbury. There are a lot of suburban Republican legislators who have said that school funding formula is unfair. So what would you say to them about how you would maintain important education aid to cities in light of the fact that many legislators in your own party are saying that this is not fair, not equitable?
Well, I actually don't agree with them. I think we do have a burden to provide a good education for all our young people, no matter where they are. And some communities simply can't afford that. And so I think that other communities who can afford it and help should help bear that burden.
Why did you pick the VFW hall here today to make your announcement?
Well, we like veterans. We like Waterbury. And it's not the capital.
On the campaign trail, you've made an effort to reach out to those who are against some of the gun legislation. Is that kind of what you're hoping here today, and is that going to be a part of your message on the campaign?
No, that has nothing to do with Waterbury at the VFW hall.
And also, the governor, when told today about your announcement, he wanted to know what your funding is going to be, if you're going to stay within the confines of public finance.
Well, as I said earlier, and I think it was in September, that we're going to qualify for the public financing, and then we'll make a decision about whether we're going to use the public financing or traditional campaign.
Tom, can you give us a couple of other examples where you sort of rank rank with your fellow Republicans? You just mentioned education funding formula. What are some other examples?
Well, I'm an outsider. I'm not a career politician. I've never served up at the Capitol. I think I come from the private sector. I have business experience. I think I can bring those problem-solving skills and the perspective of a private citizen to the Capitol. And I think a lot of people in the Capitol probably don't hear the voices enough of ordinary citizens of what the citizens of Connecticut want and need out of their government and their leaders.
But you don't have any other examples of specific policies where you think you differ with the Republican, what some might consider the Republican mainstream?
Well, I don't actually know what their policies are, because so far they haven't been nearly as specific as I have, so I'll anxiously wait to hear what they have.
And in terms of the Waterbury location, I mean, it's no secret that you came within like 1,700 votes of Governor Malloy in this city, and this is a city where Republicans can do well. How much did that play into your decision to come here, if at all?
Well, listen, I've talked about the city. The last press conference I had was in Bridgeport. As I said in my statement, the challenges of the cities are extremely important. It'll be a huge commitment of my administration, so I think it's very appropriate that we're here.
What are your intentions as far as if you get elected governor with the state's unfunded pension liabilities? How would you specifically address that?
Well, we need to keep that liability from getting larger. Under Governor Malloy, the unfunded liabilities and funded debt have increased very dramatically. I think $2 or $3 billion, and that's completely off balance sheet. That doesn't show up in the budget. So this phony budget surplus they're talking about in an election year really doesn't exist. If you included the net increase in the unfunded pension liabilities, our deficit this year, where they're talking about a $500 million surplus, would actually be more than $1 billion.
Do you support the earned income tax credit?
Specifically as far as state workers are concerned, what would be your intentions? I know you made some comments in reference to Wisconsin and Connecticut, so do you have anything specifically in mind that you would do to address the state workers in the CBEC agreement?
Well, that agreement's going to need to be renegotiated. I understand that it's up toward the end of Governor Malloy's term, so at that time we'll address that, work with the state workforce to come to an agreement that works for everybody. Yes.
Yeah, I want to ask you a question. I live here in Waterbury, and I also want to ask you a question, actually two questions, about people who are closing on their homes. What are you going to do about that, especially here in Waterbury, and high unemployment throughout the state? And also, other things that I'd like to see you get accomplished and done. If you can answer those questions, and especially on energy assistance. In yesterday's paper, there's a lady who lives in Waterville, right down the street from me. She has no more oil. She doesn't know what she's going to do. And I don't know what we got to do to loosen up the regulations and get the oil prices down in the state of Connecticut. Thank you.
Well, energy costs are very high in Connecticut. I think we have the highest energy costs of any state other than Hawaii. Listen, I said in my comments that Wall Street may be doing well, but Main Street is not, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Foreclosure rates in Connecticut are very high right now. People who have investments on Wall Street or work on Wall Street are probably feeling pretty good, but in other parts of the state, they aren't. Unemployment rates are way too high. There's some dispute about how high unemployment actually is in Connecticut. There was an article that came out of UConn a couple of weeks ago that they estimated the real unemployment rate in Connecticut is probably north of 10%. So sometimes the figures are misleading, and that's what I'm learning, walking around the state, traveling around the state, talking to people like you and others who aren't telling the same story that I'm hearing from the media and certainly from the governor's office. I'll take one more question right here, and then I'd be happy to talk to people individually.
I was just going to ask, as far as anti-poverty programs go and benefiting the people in the city, do you support the earned income tax credit?
I do. What do you make of your former running mate getting in and announcing that he's already has a running mate in this race? And how do you shape up your Republican rivals in place?
Well, I think Heather Bon Summers is a very capable mayor in Groton, and I think she would make a good choice for lieutenant governor, but I think it's a little curious why somebody would choose a running mate this early. I don't understand.
Okay.